Hello and welcome back to the Watford Way and our series called Away Days, where we interview international Watford fans from around the world. Last time on, we had Brendan from the Watford Netherlands fan group, and today I'd like to say I'm joined by Adam, who runs the Watford Opinions Instagram page, and he also has his own WordPress website where he writes comprehensive, long articles about Watford. And yeah, they're really interesting. He's grown a lot this year. And yeah, I'm really pleased to have you on today, Adam. So first of all, how are you doing? What have you been getting up to in the world at the moment in this global pandemic? Obviously, you've not been able to come over to Watford so far this season. So yeah, what have you been getting up to, and how have you been watching the games?
Thank you for having me on first and foremost. And it's been good. The games are definitely helping the time go by during the lockdown. We have games three times a week now, so that's actually very enjoyable. And I've been watching all the matches through the Hive Live application. There's the international deal, so it's half the price here than it is in England. So that's definitely good. But yeah, I mean, what I've been doing besides school is writing the Watford Opinion mini articles and full-length articles. I've done some other writing as well. Watched Watford plenty, and yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really good, and you've gained quite a large following on Instagram now as well. Doing a lot of short articles on Instagram, and obviously you recently created your website where you write articles about Watford. Is that something that you want to get into in the future? I know you've wrote a novel yourself, but sports writing specifically, is that something you want to get into as a career, maybe writing articles about football?
It's definitely something I'd be interested in. As you mentioned, first off, I started with creative writing and I wrote a novel, but I think I find the more analytical, opinionated pieces, I find that a lot more enjoyable than the creative writing. Not that the creative writing isn't fun, but I mean, my imagination only goes so far. Whereas for football, there's always new stuff to write about. I mean, the content produces itself for you, and then it's more about inputting my opinion, reporting it the correct way, and then sharing it in a way where I try to get my opinion across, but at the same time leave it open for interpretation, because I'm not going to go out and say someone's opinion is wrong, because obviously an opinion is opinion. It can't be right or wrong. But I always like to make it in a way where I insert my opinion, but also have it open for a room for discussion, because opinions are meant to garner discussion and debates. It's not meant to be, all right, I'm right, you're wrong, and that's it. So yeah, and then it's definitely something I'd be interested in doing. Sports football writing in America is definitely a bit difficult, but I really enjoy it, and it's not something I see myself stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, you are called Watford Opinions, as you mentioned, and I'm going to get your opinions on a few things today. And first of all, before we get into it, I just want to say Adam is a really, really talented writer. So if you do want to check out his Watford articles or his Instagram page, links will be in the description to that. But first of all, I want to take you right back to the beginning, possibly when you were born. I don't know, you can tell us now, but when did you start supporting Watford? Was it a family thing? Was it something that you just took upon yourself, or does your wider family support Watford, and that's kind of what you got you involved with the club?
Well, for the first, if I'm going to be honest, first, I don't know, 10 years of my life, I don't really hear much about Watford. I knew my family were supporters because half of my family is from Watford, the other half's from America. So one side of my family didn't have a team because they didn't follow any team, but the other side was Watford. So I inherited it. But for quite a few years, I mean, I'd heard of them, but didn't really know much about them. And then I'd say when I truly became a fan was when we were still in the championship, the April of 2015. I don't know if this was another question, but I guess I'll just go into my first match. I was over in England for April break, vacations, and my uncle asked me, "Do you want to go to a soccer game?" And I'm like, or a football game, and I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I didn't know what else I was gonna do, and I really didn't know much at the time. I remember we were in the old team shop, and my uncle was jokingly quizzing me, and he was asking, "All right, who wears number 9 for Watford?" And I just said Agallo because I had no idea. I mean, that's how little I knew. But I went to the match against Middlesbrough where we won 2-0, and right off, from there, I was so hooked to the team. I've followed every match since, and I wanted to know more after that match. And I mean, I talked to my uncle about it now, and he says you're lucky that was your first game, because that's also one of the best games I've been to in a long time. So,
yeah.
since that match, like I'd always known about them, vaguely followed them, but since after that match, I was heavily invested. And then throughout the entire Premier League journey, obviously, I was very much invested. So it's definitely a family inherited thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good to hear. And was that your first ever football match you attended in your life, or in America did you go to some MLS games maybe, or was that your first experience in a football ground with a full crowd?
That's definitely my first experience in a football ground with a full crowd. I've been to a few American football games. And I mean, the stadium I go to is an 80,000 seater, so 4 times as many as fans of Watford Stadium. But I'm not even saying this because I'm Watford Opinions or anything, but the atmosphere at the proper football match, not American football, but like at a Watford match, is uncomparable and so much better than an 80,000 seater, because you have an 80,000 seat stadium, people are clapping after a good play and a bit of cheers, but nothing compares to that in my opinion, at Vicarage Road. I mean, everyone's always chanting, and especially my first time going, it was an atmosphere I never imagined was even possible.
Yeah. It's great that was your first experience that season, and obviously that was the season we got promoted, wasn't it? The 14-15 season. So you picked a good match to go to there for your first game, Adam. Well done there. I want to take you to our Premier League era. Obviously, you spent 5 years in the Premier League. Obviously, unfortunately, you recently got relegated. What was your experience and the thoughts of that? Obviously, you went through a lot of managers during that time. Had some highs, but also had some lows. Did you go to any Premier League games when we were in it? And what were your thoughts on that time you spent in the Premier League?
I mean, I guess we'll just go from the very start. I mean, the first season, I didn't go to any Premier League matches. I went to the FA Cup semi-final against Palace, because I usually try to go over during April break to see my family. So I went to the Wembley match there. But the first season, everyone was expecting us to go right back down to the Championship. I mean, realistically, every season we've been favored to get relegated, bar maybe last season and maybe the season before. But the first season under Quique Sanchez-Flores, I mean, I watched us, and it's just like, I don't know why people think we're getting relegated. Obviously, we were riding on the high of promotion, and then I mean, I remember we started off with a few draws, and we started off all right, but I mean, we never really looked like we were going to get relegated that season. And I mean, the 2015-16 season under Sanchez-Flores, it was FA Cup semifinal as well. It was very exciting. Then when we sacked him at the end of the season, I was actually understanding of it. I mean, but then again, I wasn't really.
I was devastated. Quique, I loved him.
I loved him too, like in the sense that, like, it's sad to see him go, but I sort of understood the trajectory of how we kept on losing matches. So I vaguely understood it. I was still a bit confused. Then again, I wasn't totally sick yet of the constant, or maybe you like it, but the constant sackings. I mean, because the only other manager I've been a real hard fan for was Djukanovic. So I hadn't been through too many sackings. But then the next season, who do we bring in? It was Matsari, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That season was pretty boring. I remember we drew one and lost our first 2 matches. Then after 3 matches, we looked really poor. Then we had 2 good matches against West Ham and Man U. And that was, so like the season looked right again. But I mean, I guess something that just applies for basically every season is it was a strong start followed by a weaker finish to the season. I mean, we always seem to be in Europa League places, except for last year, around Christmas time, but then by the end of the season we'd fall. So
yeah, I think you're pretty much bang on there. And did you manage to go to any matches in that Matsari season? Did you manage to get over to England at all?
I believe I was able to go. I'm pretty sure it was that season I went to. When we played, I think it was away to Spurs and then home to Swansea, I believe it was. I believe that's the season. Yeah. So I mean, it was that season, because I'm pretty sure Swansea was the last time we picked up points that entire season. So before we lost the last 6, so it was very. I mean, those experiences were really fun because that was my first time going to an away match, and then my second time at the Vic. I mean, so it's definitely interesting. But yeah, the Matsari era was.
I think the away match experience is different as well, because obviously you're in someone else's ground, you're surrounded by 2,000 or 3,000 Watford fans, and obviously for away games it tends to be the more die-hard dedicated fans, obviously traveling up and down the country. That must have been a good experience for you as well, going to your first away game.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was we lost the match 4-0. One thing I found very interesting about that match, though, it kind of echoes what happened in the FA Cup finals. It's like, despite the fact we were losing, everyone was singing their hearts out. Like, no one was booing the players off the pitch. It was, I mean, that I just find that, like, I don't think you'd ever find that anywhere in like any American sport, where it's going to be like you're applauding the players despite them not winning. Yes, you can get on the players' nerves. You're allowed to boo the players. Obviously, that's going to happen. But just to see the support, it's like, you know what, we're playing Spurs away. We weren't really supposed to win. And just to see everyone getting behind the players anyway, that was a really special just thing to feel.
Yes, that's really, really good. And then obviously, Matsari gets sacked. We move on to Marco Silva, who's a very divisive figure, shall we say, in the Watford fan base. What do you think of his season? Because obviously, again, you mentioned we always seem to start strongly and then we tail off. Marco Silva especially started really strongly, because I know we were challenging for Champions League places at the very beginning. Troy Deeney obviously famously come out with his cojones comment when we beat Arsenal. What do you think of Marco Silva before ultimately he got sacked, didn't he? Because obviously links to Everton. What do you think of his reign up until he left? And then obviously we appointed Javi Gracia as his replacement.
I think the whole Marco Silva definitely was a good manager at the start. He'd come, I believe, from, was it Hull City that he just got?
That's correct. Yeah.
But I always wonder a fair amount about him, because obviously once he went to Everton, he didn't do that well. I mean, he's not the manager anymore. He's one of the managers that I think definitely good, but he's kind of one that'll give you a bounce when he comes in, but over the course of the season, I don't know if he's going to have it. Then again, maybe it was the Everton interest that did kind of change his focus. But I don't actually know if we can directly blame that, because at the end of the day, the manager isn't saying different things in training and saying like, all right, I'm not going to motivate you as much because I want to leave. Like, I don't think that's natural. I think another focus of that season again was Richarlison as well. Obviously followed Marco Silva in his footsteps to Everton. Richarlison, obviously now he's a very good player, but some people think we sold him for too little. I don't think that at all. He scored 5 goals in his first 12 matches for Watford, which is very good. He played every single match that season and scored 0 in his last 26. So the fact that we were able to sell him for near £40 million is fantastic. So
yeah, I absolutely agree there. I think £40 million, I don't think Watford could have really turned that down for Richarlison. And then on to Javi Gracia, and probably Watford's most successful period for quite a long time. Obviously, he come in when we were at our lowest. He got us back to where we needed to be. And I'm going to skip quite a lot of stuff here and go straight to the FA Cup final. Obviously, we had a great FA Cup run with Javi, beating Crystal Palace, Wolves, and ultimately getting to the final against Manchester City. Before I ask you about the game, I want to talk to you about you and if you went to the game and how you got there, what the experience was like. Have you been to a final previously? And yeah, what was it all like? Who did you go with? Where did you sit? And yeah, I'm really interested to know what that experience was like for you getting to a final with Watford.
Yeah, I mean, first off, well, the reason I was able to go is like my whole family had made it, kind of jokingly said like, if we make, and this was in January, because I jokingly said this after we beat Woking, and it's like, if we make the final, can I go? And they're like, all right, we'll all chip in, sure, because I mean, it happened. Then lo and behold, we beat Wolves in one of the greatest matches in club history. And then just like that, we're in the final. And fortunately, they were able to stick to their word. And but yeah, quite literally, the whole weekend, yes, we lost it. I mean, it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. First off, I actually went on a little radio interview with BBC Three Counties Radio the day before the final. The thing with that interview, though, was I was still in school. I still had school the day before the final in America, obviously.
Oh, really? So you hadn't even flown over at that time?
No, I raised my hand in the middle of math and told the teacher, like, I have this. I emailed him before class, obviously, but like, I have this now. Can I step outside? So I stepped outside of the school, took the call from behind the school. It was raining, but I couldn't take it inside of school. So I was that was like a 5-minute interview. So that was fun. I come home from school, grab my bags. I go to the airport, get dropped off, and then I'm on the airport on my own and go to. I flew over on my own.
Oh, you flew over on your own. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. So yeah, that because I've never even flown on my own before. So how old were you then? 14, 15 years old?
Oh, I should probably know this. I think I just turned 15. Yeah, I just turned 15.
Wow, that's really cool. And obviously you landed in England at what, in the middle of the night, early morning?
Yeah, I probably landed 7, 8 in the morning. So.
And the final was on that day?
The final was on that day, yeah.
Wow, God, you must have been so tired.
Yeah, I slept pretty well on the flight over. I intentionally or unintentionally didn't get much sleep the night before, whether that's from nerves for the interview and final or not. I don't know, but yeah, so I flew over. Then my grandparents met me at the airport. They drove me to their flat, and then from there I went to my uncle's, the same one that took me to the first match, and then we along with another group of cousins, we all had lunch together, and then went to the station to Wembley. I then sat with my cousin, and we were right by one of the corner flags, a bit over one of the tunnels on the bottom rim. It wasn't the tunnel the players came out of, but
were you near the Watford singing section?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing I want to say is I'm glad your flight did not get delayed, because if it got delayed, too much longer, you might not have even been able to come to the final. So yeah, that I can't. You've never actually told me that before, that it was that tight. So I'm very pleased you managed to get over for that. Obviously, the result wasn't what we wanted. Manchester City obviously destroyed us, but I think that the pre-match build-up. The fireworks, the confetti, everything, walking up Wembley Way. I hope that was worth it for you. And obviously you said it was one of the best experiences you had in your life. What were your thoughts on that game? And did you kind of think that Javi Gracia's future was finished after that? Obviously it was such a good season up to that point. But I think most Watford fans thought that he would keep his job longer than 4 games. And obviously, ultimately, he did get sacked after 4 games. Into the season after that. So what are your thoughts on Javi Gracia ultimately leaving?
I personally, like most Watford fans, wasn't a fan of him leaving, but I can't say I was surprised, because once we made the final, our form in the league dipped dramatically, like between the semifinal and final, as well as the 4 matches. So I was thinking back to the time with Quique Sanchez Flores, where even though we wound up finishing 13th that season and 11th Javi's season, the last bunch of matches, I mean, the results were going against us. So I don't look at it as 4 matches is what got Javi sacked, and I don't even look at it as it's the final that is what got Gracia sacked. I look at it as the run of league games before the final, in conjunction with those 4 starting league games. So I don't agree with it, but I can't say I was totally surprised. But then going back to Sanchez Flores, I kind of questioned me, like, if you didn't like him before, why are you going to go back to him again? I didn't hate him as a manager, and he did get that result against Arsenal right off the bat, but it was kind of confusing to me. Like, surely there's someone else out there that you're going to roll the dice on, rather than go something that, well, it wasn't good enough for you to keep him for more than a season. So why would you go back to it now?
Yeah, I agree with you about Javi, that you looked at that whole period of time, obviously the 4 games leading up to his sacking, but also that period of time when we got to the FA Cup final. You said there about Quique Sanchez Flores obviously coming back. It's one of them things where a lot of Watford fans had that affiliation with him, but some people kind of questioned the decision. Obviously, he didn't last very long either. And one result that sticks out to me was that 8-0 thumping to Manchester City, which I can see you nodding about then, which is probably one of the worst games I've been to and watched as a Watford fan, because it was just so embarrassing conceding all of them goals. That ultimately led to his sacking. Nigel Pearson come in, revived Watford. We were really looking good up until January. What are your thoughts on Nigel Pearson? Did you think he was the man to save us?
Um, if he couldn't do it, then no one could. I would have liked to see him come in right after Gracia was sacked, rather than bringing in Sanchez Flores. I also was well, he's time of recording, he's just signed for West Brom, but I was also kind of fancying Big Sam as well. In terms of Pearson was a manager that he just tried to make it as simple for the players as possible and let the players do what they do best. It was almost kind of a not that this is directly true, but it's kind of a way like, we're not going to beat you with our tactics. We're going to beat you because the players are where they should be. It's not like we're going to have some fancy defensive setup. It's like, no, we're just going to do our 4-2-3-1, and that's what we're doing. And I remember when all of Deulofeu, Dini, and Sarr were healthy, of those 10 matches, we won 5 of them, and I think we lost 2 or 3 times. So it's when we had all the weapons at our disposal, we were one of the better teams in the league. We were top half when all our good attacking players were available. And I guess this is what brings me to the where it went wrong for us last season is I think the reason we were relegated is because we had a false sense of security in our depth, because we just come off a very good season. We just added Ismaila Sarr. So it's like, we're not really thinking, all right, we haven't really lost anyone. I mean, but then again, if you're not going to be pushed, the league changes every year. The league's getting better and improving. So if you're not going to make 3 or 4 improvements, then it's going to be tough. I mean, we signed Welbeck, who eventually during Project Restart did start to reintegrate a bit, but we had a full sense of security in our depth. And now I'm not saying you should be able, if Dini, Deulofeu, or Sarr is injured, you should have someone of their exact quality on the bench. I mean, that's just untenable. You can't have that unless you're one of the big teams in the league. But I just mean it in the sense that, I mean, Welbeck, yes, he's played wide, but it's like, it's not really where he's most effective, for example. And then as soon as Sarr was injured, I don't know why. Another thing is we just went to hoofball all the time and kept booting the ball up to Dini. And I just think a lot of that is, even if one day Deulofeu or Sarr or Dini was injured, we still had good enough players to replace them. It's just they didn't really fit the system well, and we almost became too nervous, and we didn't let them show the quality they have. It's almost like we didn't trust the depth in a way. So I think we just need it. If we had like a true proper left winger to replace Deulofeu, or if we were to not do the 4-2-3-1 and go to like a 4-4-2 and pair up Dini and Gray and just have everyone playing where they are most natural, I think that would have been more effective. But
yeah, I think you got that spot on there. I think the thing with Sarr and Deulofeu is obviously when we lost him for a period of time, especially Deulofeu, we lost him after that Liverpool win at what was probably the most crucial time for us. We wanted to obviously carry on from that result. Ultimately, we got relegated. I think the difference between someone like Deulofeu and Sarr and some of our backup players like a Passetto or a Welbeck, for example, I think that Deulofeu has that. He's just one of them players that has that magic. He can just turn it on when he wants to, and he can create a goal out of nothing, as we saw at Wembley in the semi-final. Lovely chip into the top right-hand corner, obviously out of nowhere, got us back into the game. And that's something we missed, I personally think, obviously, towards the end of that season. And I hope that someone like Deulofeu would come back to us if we got promoted. Obviously, he's on loan at Udinese at the moment. But yeah, it's a real shame that we got relegated. And now on the relegation, you must have been absolutely devastated, because you've obviously only seen positive times from Watford, really. Obviously, our promotion, 5 years in the Premier League, which I think is the longest time Watford have ever spent in the Premier League. You must have been devastated that we went down. Yeah,
I mean, it was definitely something that was it was just different, because as you said, like, I haven't really felt that before. And then also, as we were discussing before, it's like we always start off the season strong and then decline. So it's not like we'd even really been in much of a relegation scrap and just escaped it. Like, I wasn't really used to that whole idea of, all right, we're competing at the bottom the entire time, because we'd been so used to competing with the big guns for the first half of the season. So it was definitely tough. Then again, the week before relegation, the writing was kind of on the wall. Once we had to play Man City and Arsenal and we were without a manager, the writing was basically on the wall at that point. But then again, it's just football. I mean, we're Watford. I don't know if many people would put us in the 20 biggest teams in England per se. I guess that goes down to the individual, but it's something that it's just part of football. And obviously, even though I hadn't been a fan for relegation, I know the history and that historically we're more of a second tier team than a first tier team. But yeah, it was still definitely disappointing. But I honestly think one thing that helped out of the many bad things that's brought of the coronavirus is there wasn't much of an offseason. We couldn't really dwell on it much. There's a couple transfers in September, the season's starting up again. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up, actually, because obviously there wasn't really that long, apart from the initial time that the UK went into lockdown between like March and I think July, was it, that we came back for Project Restart? Late June, early July.
June, I think, yeah.
Yeah, late June. Obviously, from late June onwards, as you say, there really wasn't much of a break. We obviously played our remaining Premier League games, which led to our relegation. And then we were pretty much straight back into what was a very, very short pre-season with a new manager, Vladimir Ivic, ready to go in the Championship. You've done a lot of articles on Vladimir Ivic, his style, his system, how he tends to play, obviously talking about his time at Maccabi Tel Aviv. I know you quite like Ivic. You're currently Ivic in. I know a lot of Watford fans are Ivic out. I presume you are still Ivic in, unless you're keeping it a secret from me and I've suddenly turned into an Ivic out person.
No, I am still very much Ivic in, and there's many reasons why. A lot of the reason people have become Ivic out is like they look at our squad and they think, oh, we should be top of the league, no question. It's like the fact we're not top of the league right now and we're dropping points. It's like we can't have. So that's why a lot of people are Ivic out, and I understand that point of view. And then again, people have become really accustomed to if the manager isn't doing well after a few matches, they're gone. But I'd say the reason I'm Ivic in is first off, even despite relegation, in the Premier League, we had a bunch of managers. And by the end of their reign, it didn't seem like any of them could get it quite right. It always seemed like something was going to start to go wrong. So it comes to the point where you have to think like, well, is it really the manager that's the problem right now? I mean, for example, last season, we had 3 managers plus a caretaker. Like, was it really ever the manager's fault? If, I mean, at the end of the day, the players are the one who are out there on the pitch. But besides that point, because I mean, maybe you do think that's the manager. So fair enough. If that's your standpoint, I'm not going to be here to combat that. But the reason I'm Ivic in is first off, the reason he's come in is because we need to be because the aim is promotion. That's it. And at the end of the day, this is obvious. But well, let's say a team wins 30 matches and loses 16, and all of those wins are 4 or 5-0 wins, right? People think, oh, that team is so good, they're fantastic. And then you have a team with 30 wins and 1 draw, and all the wins are scrappy 1-0 wins, and then there's the 1 draw. And then that's, even though that team, like, all right, they're scrappy, they're not really doing well. I mean, they're just edging out victories. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get the victories. It matters if you're able to get the points. And now, obviously, that's a super extreme, unrealistic example. But what I'm trying to get at here is, even though Ivic might not be the manager that's going to be able to get us those 4 or 5-0 wins, he's a lot more able to than most other managers to be able to make sure we don't concede too many goals or no goals at all, and make sure we have just enough attacking threat to the point where we are able to edge out those 1-0 victories. Because at the end of the day, there's many times this season where you think, well, maybe we didn't really deserve a victory that match and we were still able to get it. For example, that match against Birmingham City. Maybe you think Birmingham City losing that match is harsh, but at the end of the day, we were able to edge it out. And then to think about that match against Derby County, Ivic's system might have been boring at that point with the 5 at the back, but we never really looked like conceding. We didn't have too many attacking chances, but we had just enough. And Ivic is almost like, kind of reminds me of a off-brand sort of Jose Mourinho, where it might not be the most exciting, but he's setting you up for success. The success might be boring, but at the end of the day, it's more. The goal is promotion. It's not about having an exciting season, finishing 3rd and not going up. Because I think at the end of the day, all that matters is being able to get as many points as possible. It doesn't matter how boring it is. And right now, at the time of recording, we're in 3rd, not far off of an automatic promotion spot. And I mean, at the end of the day, Ivic if the owners want a tactical change, getting a new manager isn't going to do that, because Ivic has done 5 at the back. He's done a 5-2-3. He's done a 5-3-2, and he's able to get the players to implement it well enough. He's done a 4-3-3, a 4-4-2. So you can't point at another manager and say, all right, we don't like how Ivic was doing. We want a 4-4-2. Now let's bring you in. No, Ivic is the one doing the 4-4-2, and it's really up, just to name an example. So I think it's a lot more up to the players now than it is to Ivic to really get that response and get promotion, because I think Ivic has given the players all they need to get promotion.
Yeah, I think what it is with the Watford fan bases is obviously since the Pozzo's come in, we've sacked and appointed so many managers that it's like the sacking culture basically, and it's become so normal for us to sack a manager as soon as we hit like a slightly iffy or bad patch of form, especially on Twitter, as I'm sure you know, Adam. Watford fans jump on it straight away. I don't like this style of football. It's not exciting to play. But you made some really good points there. And obviously, however you play, as long as we get promoted, then we can figure that out when we get into the Premier League, that we want to be more expansive. Let's recruit this player. Let's recruit that player. But at the moment, as you say, I'm more than happy getting these 1-1s with Brentford, which was a good result for us, I believe. These 1-0s over Birmingham. We've had a few close calls, a couple of 3-2s. But I think to be like devil's advocate, I think what some Watford fans want to see is for us to be like a Bournemouth or a Norwich and comprehensively beat teams 4-5-0. Because obviously that's what people want. They want entertainment, and they want to be entertained while going up. So I assume you can kind of see that from someone else's perspective.
Yeah, I definitely see that point of view. And there's even times where I think to myself, like, well, this is so boring. If we had another manager, we'd be up by now. But again, like at the end of the day, the goal is promotion. To have 31 scrappy 1-0 victories is better than having 30 4-0 victories. Obviously, again, an extreme example, I know. But I think I just look at how the championship is right now, and it's really hard to think of a manager, especially when you have the Norwiches and Bournemouths, who are rarely going to lose like too many points on us. Like our rates are very similar. I just find it so difficult to think of a manager that would be able to come in and then just make us go clear of them. I just find that hard to think of. Maybe there is a manager I'm not thinking of that is out there, but yes, I want to see exciting football. That would obviously, it's more enjoyable to watch a 4-0 victory than a 1-0 victory. I also do think Ivic can play exciting football. It's just the tactics he decides to play, and oftentimes he kind of wants it to be a sort of weird balance of a mix between we're going to keep it deep, but at the same time we're going to have the possession. But as we saw in the second half against Brentford, that was an exciting half of football. Unfortunately, we only scored from a penalty. Well, we should have scored twice, but VAR.
Well, we did actually score for the second time, and it was onside.
That's a
but yeah, VAR. So like on the replay, Peritza was clearly onside, yes, as we've all obviously now seen after the game in hindsight. So we should have really seen it out, as you say. But yeah, that was really frustrating. Before we move on to the last point, I just want to say happy Christmas to everybody watching, because this video is actually going to be released just before Christmas. So I hope you all have a lovely day. Hope you have a lovely day with your family, Adam, as well. And yeah, guys, just make sure to always talk to each other. If you're struggling, you can always message me or Adam. Obviously, a lot of people have been struggling during coronavirus at the moment, going into lockdowns, out of lockdown. Can you go to football? Can you not go to football? Stuff like that. So if any of you guys are struggling, feel free to message us, and I'm sure Adam feels the same. And yeah, we'll chat to you about whatever the struggles are. And yeah, just stay safe, everyone, and I hope you're doing well. Lastly, Adam, I want to talk about you and Watford Opinions and what you're doing at the moment, because obviously, when did you kind of started it middle of the year, didn't you? Just as we come out into that Project Restart.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my first home match review, if I remember correctly, was when we lost to Burnley. So yeah, right as Project Restart started. I mean, if you really want the time and to spend the time scrolling through my entire account, you can see the change that there's been since I've started to where I'm at now. But yeah, that's when I started. Yeah, beginning of Project.
Yeah. And Adam, I have to say he does really, really, really high quality posts. Now, it's literally like, this is just my opinion personally, but I would be willing to pay for your content, Adam. So that should be a big compliment for you, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
other people, would say the same thing. What inspired you to start the account? Like, was it that you felt you couldn't talk to Watford fans in your area? Did you find it difficult to kind of find people on the same level as you to communicate with? Like, what kind of inspired you to start the account? Was it to connect with Watford fans from around the world and kind of express your opinion and see what other people are thinking?
I'd say it's definitely a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, on the personal level, I done, as we mentioned before, I'd done like creative writing, but I wanted to move on to some other type, and writing about my favorite football team. I mean, I really couldn't see anything better than that. But then that as well, I wanted to connect with more fans, because then again, I mean, I have my family, my brother who's a fan, but really there's not really much of a Watford support that I know of in New York, at least. I know there is in New York Hornets, which I'm going to try to get involved with once the virus ends. But obviously there wasn't really that many people for me to talk to, and I wanted to get my opinion heard as well and have that discussion and see what other fans were thinking. And that's, I guess, what inspired me to make the account in the first place. But then as it just kept going along, like yes, it takes, I mean, if I'm doing 2 posts a day and they're around 200-300 words, it's it is time consuming. It probably takes 15-20 minutes for each one, because I try to make sure they're edited and that they're looking proper. But I guess, I mean, the reason I started it and still doing it is I think it's just really nice to be able to share my opinion and hear other people's opinion. And obviously not everyone who reads my articles responds to them. Most people don't, but I still do talk to people to get their opinion. But even just being able to share my opinion, it's just, I think that's a really good feeling. And it's just nice to be able to share my thoughts with people from around the world, people I wouldn't be able to share my thoughts with otherwise. And I think that's probably true for a lot of sports writing. I mean, you get to connect with people you didn't think you'd connect with. Like, I wouldn't have met you if it weren't for Watford Opinions. I probably wouldn't know you existed.
Well, we both attended the FA Cup final. I didn't even know you were there, because we didn't obviously know each other at that time. So yeah, it's been really good getting to know you, getting to know all the other international Watford fans that we speak to. Adam's part of my group chat, which is basically just a group full of fans from all around the world: Hong Kong, Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, America. And yeah, it's really, really good. And obviously, if you want to check out Adam's stuff, he's got his Instagram page and his WordPress that you can check out, and links to that will be in the description. And they can also subscribe to you, Adam, can't they? And what benefits do they get by subscribing to your WordPress?
Yeah, so subscribing or following to, I think is what they call it, to the WordPress, is you don't need to even make an account. All you have to do is just enter your email. That's it. And then as soon as I publish an article, it just gets sent directly to you. So it's a lot easier to get the articles. You just open up an email and there it is. Usually you get those a lot sooner than when I actually post it. And like, say the article is out, so it's kind of like early access as well. I mean, it costs nothing. You don't need an account. So I'd be very grateful if you could follow that. Yeah,
I personally have done, and I highly recommend everybody watching this does as well. So Adam, thank you very much for coming on. It's very much appreciated. This will also be uploaded into audio format on Spotify as well. So if you guys want to listen to it like on the bus or on the train or wherever you are, on audio format, rather than looking at us two ugly faces, you can do that on Spotify. And yeah, obviously give us a follow on there. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I hope you all have a lovely Christmas, and make sure you stay safe and look after your families. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.